There are a few people in Washington, D.C. that I trust and tell the truth. There are a few people that call me every time they turn on a water faucet from Washington, D.C. And they say, I just want you to know I'm holding a press conference today because I turned on a water faucet. You're like, oh. And after a while, I don't take those people's phone calls, and after a while, I stop reading their emails. And there are a few people that are in it for the wrong reasons. And then there are a few people, Jim DeMint is one of them, Michele Bachmann is one of them, Mike Lee is one of them, that do it for the right reasons and are clean. I mean, we were talking about this with Jim DeMint the other day. Look what Jim DeMint has done. Jim DeMint just stopped the law of the sea treaty. I mean, that's a pretty amazing thing to do. You can't take Jim DeMint out because he's clean. Does he make mistakes from time to time? Sure, everybody does. But look at what this guy has done. Michele Bachmann is the same way. She's a good, decent person. May not agree with her all the time, but she's a good, decent woman. And she is standing, and she's on the Intelligence Committee. Rarely do I get calls from Michele Bachmann, but when I do, they're always important. And she has called me a few times, and lately it's been about the Muslim Brotherhood because I've been talking to people in Washington, D.C. and saying, hey, what's the deal with the Muslim Brotherhood thing? Are we looking into this? Michele called me this morning, and she said, Glenn, there are decent people up on the Hill that are trying to expose the Muslim Brotherhood, and it is spreading. This disease is spreading so rapidly, it is breathtaking. This goes to a documentary that we did, about 3 months ago, where we exposed what this president is doing with the Muslim Brotherhood and how it is infiltrating all levels. And we're at a place now that if we don't stop it, we're approaching a point of no return. And they are purging everything from our military, from our FBI. So we're not even teaching what the Muslim Brotherhood stands for. We're not teaching what radical Islam even is. So how are you ever going to find it? How are you ever going to recognize it? It's out of control. The inspectors general were asked a few questions by a few members of Congress. Michele Bachmann is here to talk about it, and this is important. I beg you to listen because the elephant media and Drudge and Fox have come out on the wrong side on this issue. They are following John McCain's lead. It's the wrong lead. And if you're not there to back these people up, they're going to be eaten by CARE and the Muslim Brotherhood. Michele Bachmann, welcome to the program.
Glenn, thank you so much. What an important topic. And I have to say that you and the people at the Blaze have been leading the pack on this. And thank you for the wonderful documentary that you've done, because the influence today of the Muslim Brotherhood at the highest levels, from the White House to the Pentagon to the FBI, even to our United States military, truly is breathless, and people have to know about it.
Okay. So tell me what happened. You and who else wrote a letter to the Inspector General's office and said, there are some questions here that need to be addressed.
That's right. There was 3 members of the Intelligence Committee, myself, Lynn Westmoreland from Georgia, Tom Roney from Florida, and 2 members of the Judiciary Committee, Trent Franks of Arizona and Louis Gohmert of Texas, all signed on to a letter. We asked numerous questions of the federal government because a letter was sent. Well, let me just back up. After the Fort Hood tragedy, a report was issued that said the real problem in our government is that we are not teaching FBI agents or our military to recognize radical Islam. So that's what we need to do. We need to teach about it. Well, in response to that, over 50 Muslim organizations wrote a letter requesting that the White House start a task force to stop that from happening. 5 days after the White House got this letter, this October 19th letter, and people can see it on my website, or maybe you have it on the Blaze, 5 days after the White House got this letter from the 50 Muslim groups, they started the purge of the federal government. Let me tell you, the federal government doesn't do anything in 5 days, but they started the purge of the FBI. So now the FBI, who are supposed to be trained in radical Islam, elements have been purged out of their training materials, so they are no longer being taught about what radical Islam is in order to be able to truly identify it ahead of time. Now, this is serious. This is also happening throughout our United States military, Department of Justice, and Homeland Security. And the word purge isn't my word. That's the word used by the 50 Muslim organizations. They demanded that the president purge the training materials and the trainers. And so already people have been fired who formerly were teaching what radical Islam is. They've been fired or they've been reassigned, and they asked that the libraries be purged. Americans don't purge libraries, but they demanded that the FBI's library be purged. All of this is happening, and so we wrote a letter to the inspectors general asking the questions, don't you think you should look into the influence of the Muslim Brotherhood and what it is they're seeking to do?
Okay, so you write this, which is your job, and
our duty.
Your duty to protect and defend the United States from all enemies, foreign and domestic. There is no question in any sane person's mind that the Muslim Brotherhood, I mean, look at this guy who ran and won the presidency in Egypt. He says, oh, I'm a moderate. As soon as he wins, it's Sharia law. We're going down, death for Allah is our highest goal. It's all the same crap. So
and they call for Jerusalem to become Egypt's capital, not Israel's capital. They call for the demise of Israel and the demise of the United States. They believe in civilization jihad, which is to come into the United States and subvert the United States from within. I know this sounds like radical stuff, but all you have to do is look at just look at the Muslim Brotherhood and who they say they are.
Yeah. Okay. So when you wrote this letter, then Keith Ellison comes out. And Keith Ellison is he has a record of being the mafia hitman.
Well, he has a long record of being associated with CARE and with the Muslim Brotherhood. CARE is an unindicted co-conspirator, as stated in the largest terrorist financing case that we've had in the United States of America. And so he came out and essentially wanted to shut down the inspectors general from even looking into any of the questions that we were asking. So he wanted to shut it down. In response, I wrote another letter back to Keith Ellison, a 16-page letter, which I would encourage all of your listeners to go and read this letter. It's what I call a bulletproof letter. I have 59 footnotes with one example after another of the penetration of the Muslim Brotherhood into the federal government. One of the most recent is so outrageous, it's hard to believe. 2 weeks ago, the State Department broke its own law, like I said, and let a foreign terrorist come into the United States, into the White House, meet with the National Security Council, and demand the release of the blind sheik. This is absolutely outrageous.
No, wait. There's more to this story that I think is even more outrageous. Not only did they break their own laws, give this guy a special waiver, bring him into the White House. This is a guy who is a known part of a known terrorist organization. He then campaigns to have the blind sheik release, but who pays for his airline ticket?
We do. The taxpayers. What I want to know is, did we upgrade him to first class? I mean, this is outrageous what has happened. And so then now what's happened is the attack machine has been turned on myself and the other members of Congress who have been asking the questions, that somehow we're the Muslim haters, we're the witch hunters, we're the new Joe McCarthyites, because we're asking these questions. All the while, 2 weeks ago, the Obama administration breaks federal law to bring someone that we list on the State Department as a terrorist organization, a member of that terrorist organization. We bring him in to the White House. You don't get any higher when it comes to intelligence secrets. You don't get any higher than the National Security Council. He sits down with the National Security Council in our White House and has the guts to demand that we release one of the worst, most violent terrorists that we have behind bars. He wants us to let him out of prison, to let him go free. The guy who was the mastermind of the 1993 World Trade Center bombing, the Blind Sheik.
Okay, so let's.
And you don't hear a peep about this.
No, of course not. Let me take you here, because one of the more controversial things is you say Anthony Weiner's wife has connections to the Muslim Brotherhood. Now, this is important because she works for Hillary Clinton.
Well, she is the chief aide to the Secretary of State. And we quoted from a document, and this has been well reported all across Arab media, that her late father, who's now deceased, was a part of the Muslim Brotherhood. Her brother was a part of the Muslim Brotherhood, and her mother was a part of what's called the Muslim Sisterhood. We have requirements to get a high-level security clearance. One thing that the government looks at are your associations, and in particular your family associations. And this applies to everyone. It would be the same that is true with me. If my family members were associated with Hamas, a terrorist organization, that alone could be sufficient to disqualify me from getting a security clearance. So all we did is ask, did the federal government look into her family associations before she got a high-level security?
And it's not an unreasonable thing to ask, seeing that this president and this administration apparently didn't know that Van Jones was one of the founding members of a radical, revolutionary, anti-American communist organization, and he's in the White House.
That's right.
So somebody's dropping the ball someplace, or somebody knows.
That's right. And somebody has been dropping the ball since the beginning of the Obama administration. Mm-hmm. And this isn't intent to be partisan or out to get the president. I mean, quite honestly, on the Intelligence Committee, I'm happy to report we are the most bipartisan committee I've ever been a part of. And with all of these unprecedented leaks that have been coming out from our federal government, all of which, by the way, undermine Israel and Israel's ability to defend herself against a nuclear Iran, we are, with one voice, Democrat and Republican, outraged by these leaks that are coming out of the administration. Never before in the history of the country have we seen this level of leaks coming out. But at the same time, there's also a parallel track of influence from the Muslim Brotherhood and the highest levels of the federal government, and we think that we need to get answers to these questions, and that's the purpose of our letters. We're asking that the inspectors general answer these questions, and Keith Ellison is trying to shut these questions down from getting addressed. I'm
really tight on time, and I want to hit a couple of other things. Stu's been going over all of this information, and he's got one question for you.
Well, I see here that you did link to the actual military document that talks about what is a potentially disqualifying condition for a security clearance. It says, quote, contact with a foreign family member if that contact creates a heightened risk of foreign exploitation, inducement, manipulation, pressure, or coercion. Then goes on to say the subject's closest and most frequent contacts are the ones most likely to present a security risk. And you're talking about both her father, who's now deceased, her mother, and her brother. So I think the media seems to be holding you to this standard that you have to have this case completely proven, when it seems like what you're saying is there a legitimate process question? Are they actually asking these questions before handing out these clearances?
Right. This has been, your links in your footnotes, and they're down, by the way. I don't know if you know that, Michelle, but the Al Jazeera links that you put in, and you said, here, go find the story on Al Jazeera. They're broken links now. We can't get to them this morning.
Really?
Oh, yeah. So we're going to need to...
Maybe we can go in the past and dig them up so that we can resurrect them.
We're going to have to get them because they've either been scrubbed or they're being hammered, by so much traffic, which I highly doubt. But so that's you. You have links showing that in Al Jazeera's own coverage.
Well, these links were up as of last Friday.
Yeah, they're not.
I wrote the letter, and we got it out by midnight last Friday night, and the links were up last Friday.
Yeah,
so they've taken them down.
I will tell you that's not unusual. As we followed these stories like this, that's really not unusual anymore.
Well, that's even more reason why we should be looking into this.
Yeah. Let me just say this to you, and then one more quick question. I just wrote a letter to the president of my company for the Blaze, and he's in charge of all content. He's kind of our news, our Uber news director, if you will. He's the president of content. And I just said, we know the truth on this story. We have had this for a while. I do not want this company to sit down on this. So we are going to cover this and continue to cover this to make sure that people hear this story. Because, Michelle, you guys are absolutely right, and it is a matter of national survival. That's
right.
Let me ask you
national security.
Let me ask you one quick question. John McCain and all of the elephant media are falling right in line with the Muslim Brotherhood bullcrap. What did John McCain do yesterday?
Well, he went on the Senate floor and he gave a spirited defense of Huma Abedin, who is a friend of his, and so that's what he did.
But you're not saying that she is compromised. You're saying, have we looked into this? Right?
That's right. That's all we're saying, because we did not aver that she is a member of the Muslim Brotherhood or that she's working on behalf of the Muslim Brotherhood. Right. Our point was regarding the security clearance.
Right.
And did she have to go through the same sort of process that anyone else has to go to? Did they check the boxes? Because if the State Department breaks American law to bring a terrorist into the White House, a member of a terrorist organization, it certainly is conceivable that maybe they looked the other way on issuing this security clearance. That's all we're doing is asking a question.
I have to tell you, we're at war. We're at war with people in the Middle East, and she's compromised. Forget about the Muslim thing. She's compromised or could have been compromised. Her husband was sending dirty photos of himself. I mean, in a wartime, you would never put that person in a delicate situation because the family has already been compromised. But I digress. Thank you very much. Go ahead.
Thank you, Glenn. I was just going to say the Muslim Brotherhood elements have declared war against the United States and Israel, and we need to recognize that they are at war, even if we don't fully are onto this. And we've got you, but I thank you and everyone at the Blaze for taking this on, because the media has a completely different view of it. So thank you.
Well, they're almost always wrong, especially when it comes to these things. Michelle, thank you very much, and keep up the fight. Never sit down. We've got your back.